8 out of 10 French people say they eat it at least once a year with fries. Mussels are the most purchased seafood product in France, ahead of oysters and salmon. The big Lille flea market illustrates this popularity each year with 500 tons of mussels consumed over a weekend.
Let's add a little bit more onto the roll. Cala.
She needs to fall into the hole. The most common, Mytilus edulis, is most liked by the French.
Carrots, cauliflower, ripe avocados, cider jelly treats.
They adore it.
It's quite great, it's very nice.
Synonymous with escapism, simplicity and conviviality, this little seafood is more delicate than it seems. The story of mussels begins here in Brussels, the vibrant capital of Europe, where one eventually forgets the grey sky and the wet cobblestones while enjoying the cozy atmosphere, in the heart of the sacred block. The restaurant Chez Léo. It has been around for over 100 years and is as famous as the mannequin piece. The tablecloths are paper and the kitchen is directly connected to the dining area. Six generations of Van Lenkers have succeeded each other at the head of the century-old restaurant.
For 6 generations, from father to son, Léon, Alphonse, Honoré, Georges, Rudy, Kevin Van Lanker.
Kevin will soon be taking over from his father, Rudy.
When the mussel arrived here in the years 30 to 35 and the Belgian loved it, Alphonse at the time decided to put mussels on his menu. Since it was a fries stand, he said he'd name the marinière the special because he would serve it with some fries. If you ask me, that's what the story is actually about. Today in Holland, we would receive it with bread. Back then, our pots of white wine, cream, and all that were served with bread. We called the sailor's dish special, served with fries. That's how mussels with fries began. I always tell this story. I was downstairs at one of the tables on the ground floor. I must have been 6 or 7 years old. And the gentleman asked my father, "What's he going to do later?" I look at my dad, he says, "That guy's an idiot." I worked at Leon. It's innate for me. I've got mussel juice in my veins. It's my life.
We're far from the 5 tables of the last century. Now, it's 1,000 daily settings and almost a ton of mussels prepared daily.
Vegetables in the mold, it's onion.
Celery. Fine. Cook the pot.
We put the vegetables on top. After the first steam, we flip it, meaning the mussels on top with the vegetables go underneath.
We give another strong blast of steam to open up the mussels, and then we move the ones on top back down to the very bottom.
And the vegetables go on top, so we have a nicely finished product. That's something you don't know how to do at home, because you don't have the knack. To do it correctly, you need to have an oil bath and be aware of whether you're using beef fat, not vegetable oil, since that is what ultimately allows you to achieve that perfect crispy fry. Much more creamy, more beautifully golden, and having a unique taste.
This long-standing tradition of Belgitude has spawned many offspring. Léon de Bruxelles. Nearly 80 restaurants in France generating over 100 million euros in revenue. Although the Van Lanker family no longer owns this restaurant chain, the management still upholds the North's rigorous nature.
So these are some mussels from Triton. Packaged on the 4th, and they're good until the 11th.
10 kilos. It's good.
The batteries, there's no swelling, no bursting, no breaking. With a strict charge case, we can ensure that once we get the molds, we verify the temperature well. We clearly check the temperature accurately. The stability if no trays are broken or swollen, ensures that we receive the correct product on time and are able to deliver it to the customer. 26 between 25 and 30% the deer. No dead mussels? No. Did you taste it? Yes, 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 it's tasted. Good? Orange color? Perfect. Nothing to say. Clients will love it. Delivery meets the requirements. The truck's temperature, the temperature of 5 degrees, between 0 and 7, we're in the clear. We have an entire procedure in place. If there's an issue with a batch of molds, we can say at any time, at any moment, this batch needs to be isolated. And we can refuse to serve customers as the product doesn't meet the specs.
An extremely strict specification that ensures the best products all year round. And it's really not so simple when you're working with a live shellfish that can actually be eaten raw. Our tale starts in Charon, in the Bay of Aiguillon. Like every day for the past 41 years, Yannick Marionneau heads out with his sons to the middle of the Pertuis Charentais to cultivate his mussels. Le Pertuis is the nursery of the French mussel. Its production cycle is short, barely more than a year.
During the months of January and February, we set up a rope made from coconut fiber, which is a 100% natural material, on the catching plugs. And here we find ourselves now, in the middle of June. The mussel larvae have been drifting about with the ocean currents and have come to settle on the rope. It's roughly like this, and here we have densities of around 5 to 10,000 millimeters.
Significant densities of mussels, yet they are still insufficient to fully meet French consumption and to reassure Yannick.
Last year, we unfortunately lost a significant 90%. Personally, we lost 90% of our livestock. What's it like to lose 90%? How does it feel? We work our asses off, as we say in our own lingo. We bend our backs, we go to the banks. We go to the government, we ask them, it's not our fault, what happened?
The mussel farms in Charente have been severely hit by an unprecedented mortality event. In scientific terms, it's called an epizootic. 12,000 tons of mussels, or 20% of France's production, are dead. Faced with such a disaster, the mussel farmers from Charente are turning to IFREMER, the French Institute for the Exploitation of the Sea, their main point of contact in a crisis. But scientists are scratching their heads, and many professionals are, of course, questioning water pollution.
I don't like using the term pollute, I don't think so, but the environment becomes aggressive. Aggressive, for what reason? Maybe because of inputs arriving via the rivers, certainly agricultural products. We need to be extremely careful with agricultural products. Pesticides, herbicides, which have the same effect on land as they do at sea, that is to say. A pesticide, a desiccant, it will constantly prevent the mussel from feeding. It can happen.
Why such a high mortality rate? That's the uncomfortable question. IFREMER suggests climatic reasons that might have increased the presence of a bacteria, Vibrio splendidus. But this one has been known for a long time and has never caused such havoc.
We are told that there's a bacteria called Vibrio splendidus, which exists naturally in the environment, but has become somewhat more virulent. And does this answer satisfy you? Not really, no, not quite. We're waiting for more detailed information. We should understand why the environment is becoming hostile for the mussel. While we know very well that the mussel, it's a coquette, falls less. You go to the ports, you find mussels on the hulls of boats, where there is fuel everywhere, where there is... There, it's truly very aggressive. Here, as we can clearly see, we are in an open environment, not dealing with intensive methods, but rather with more extensive ones. We still have questions.
Pierre Le Gall has many questions too. This doctor, who specializes in oceanography and marine biology, doesn't quite believe the reasons given by Ifremer.
If we correctly and scientifically analyze all the arguments that have been put forward, we can see that they are completely and utterly incorrect. Salinity does play a role, but mussels are quite resistant to variations in salinity, so I wouldn't say it's a fatal parameter. A poisoning by a substance that might have been brought by the rivers. Well, we should have had, at the exit of the Bay of Aiguillon, the highest mortality rates. Now, these were the weakest. Climate change can't have an impact over just a few weeks or months. Climate change is something that sets in very gradually over time, but it's not a one-time occurrence like this. It can't cause mortality.
Regarding Vibrio splendidus, a killer bacteria, according to Ifremer. Not very credible for the professor.
The identified germs do not include any disease-causing pathogens. They are certainly not the type of germs that would typically cause any kind of serious illness. These are microorganisms which grow and thrive at the expense of decomposing organic matter or organisms that are in the final stages of dying, thus extremely weakened. It's completely normal to find them on mussels at the moment when they're about to die or have just recently died, to find a significant amount of these germs present, but it's not the underlying cause.
So there is indeed something else in the water that killed the mussels in the Bay of Aiguillon last year. Possibly an excess of fresh water because of heavy rainfall, along with various bacteriological factors. Yannick Marionneau doesn't really believe it, especially since his mussels keep dying.
We noticed that there is still a bit of mortality nonetheless. This year we were slightly impacted, less so, but we will still have an impact of about 30%. We'll know more once the season finally comes to an end in autumn. It's definitely a lot. It truly is beginning to be too much.
The accumulation of punctures is starting to worry professionals, as the phenomenon tends to spread northward towards Noirmoutier and affect other shellfish. We are in the bay of Mont Saint-Michel. The mussels here are raised on bouchons, wooden stakes driven into the ground. Stéphane is one of the big producers in the region. He has heard about the mortalities in Legunion Bay, but they haven't reached here. He still remains on guard because the majority of the seed he uses, that is, baby mussels, comes from Charente.
Here we never had any fatalities. So it's true that we were quite worried when our colleagues in Charentes experienced fatalities in 2014. Now, we all believe it's a phenomenon that was very much localized, caused by who knows precisely what. It's true that there's no official reason, but everything suggests it has nothing to do with an illness or anything like that. That we are indeed more focused on a terrestrial or maritime pollution of some kind or another. We'll do the urgent and then we'd really like to hear this is where it comes from, this is the cause. But today, absolutely no one can provide us with those answers, and it's a bit worrying. It really does feel like the ocean is somewhat neglected. And we genuinely need real answers from Ifremer, rather than indeed hiding behind some studies, whatever they may be. So, gentlemen scientists, please provide us with genuine, concrete answers rather than hypothetical scenarios.
Once again being implicated, Ifremer chose not to respond to our questions. Yet, it is indeed this organization that is responsible for monitoring the quality of professional waters in France. 3 types of checks are performed each month on around 350 zones in France. Ifremer conducts research on fecal bacteria that are released by both humans and animals. Escherichia coli is a bacterium used as an indicator of microbiological contamination. and the presence of other harmful pathogenic germs. Traces of heavy metals and the presence of harmful phycotoxins are also being studied. Because filter-feeding shellfish like mussels concentrate everything in the water and can be dangerous for humans as a result. These analyses result in a classification system. In Zone A, the shellfish can be directly marketed and safely consumed. In Zone B, they must go through a 48-hour purification phase. In Zone C, mussels can only be consumed if they are purified and cooked.
These bacteriology criteria are criteria that aim at human health, but not the quality of the environment. The quality of the environment is the biological quality of the environment, meaning its aptitude. Allows organisms to develop correctly within it. You can very well have water of grade A quality, meaning it's completely devoid of any harmful pathogenic bacteria, essentially making it something that is extremely pure and highly suitable for use. For human health, it's extremely beneficial, but having water that is completely unsuitable for any kind of agricultural activities, for any development of a certain number of crucial and essential species.
In this case, one might reasonably question if the analyses conducted by IFROMA were accurate. Did they look in the right direction? At the end of 2014, Professor Legal had already provided some research leads in the pages of the Sud-West newspaper. For him, the primary cause of the mussel mortality in Charente is pollution primarily resulting from La Rochelle's port construction activities. We're talking here about 500,000 to 1 million tons of limestone dumped directly into the sea without any precautions.
The mudflat of Baie de l'Aiguillon, like the mudflats you can find almost anywhere along the coast, produces organic matter. More than the Amazon rainforest per equal surface area, of course. And from the moment there was a significant deposition of fine particles on the bottom of the seabed, all the living parts were ultimately suffocated. And these living parts, as they were potential sources of food for the mollusks, inevitably they were unable to develop properly. So the mussels and scallops and clams starved to death. They simply did not have enough available food to sustain them and stay alive.
Limestone particles would have whitened the seawater, obstructing the much-needed light and consequently killing the microalgae that mussels rely on for their food source.
That explains why the mussels ended up dying. They didn't have anything to eat since the food production was not functioning properly. There are photographs that were captured from satellite. Images of L'Aiguillon Bay before the rock removal started, and then several months after the rock removal operation had taken place. You can clearly see the difference in color. After the rock removal, there's a sort of milky white film that covers the entire area of the bay.
You think we know everything? Or are there sometimes close calls that are narrowly avoided?
One cone.
10,000 tons of mussels, which is 20% of the French production, might have died from hunger without anyone even noticing. And what about the consequences on human health? Who controls the coastal waters in France and how? Not easy to find your way through this labyrinth of administration and associations responsible for the health of shellfish and their environment. Yet, it's a public health issue in a country that consumes 160,000 tons of mussels per year. An obvious fact also when we think that the producers from the Bay of Aiguillon, for example, but they are not the only ones, process their products on board their boats to deliver them directly to the consumer. But this is not where the consumer takes the most risks. It's by going out to gather mussels along the shoreline, where the tide both rises and falls, and which escape the surveillance of IFROMA. These are the regional health agencies, other public institutions under the Ministry of Ecology that take over for the sanitary control of shellfish. Sabrina Lepentier, head of the Health and Environment Unit at the agency, introduces us to the alert system in case of a crisis.
For recreational fishing, the Regional Health Agency of Normandy monitors the quality of the shellfish on a monthly basis. And if non-compliance is confirmed, an information bulletin is issued to the town's mayor, who is then required to display it prominently at the shore fishing site. And we're suggesting to the mayor to issue an ordinance banning shore fishing. So which specific regulations are you relying on for recreational shore fishing activities? Nowadays, we are extrapolating the existing professional fishing regulations and also applying them to recreational fishing activities. But it's true that we don't have a text that clearly tells us that fishing will be banned above a certain threshold. This text doesn't exist.
No legislation to control recreational shore fishing, yet an activity that's rapidly growing. More than 2 million enthusiasts gather every month on the French coasts during the high tides. So, how do you actually know if the shellfish are safe to eat, if the recommendations of the Regional Health Agency are being followed or even known at all? At the port of Granville, at the office of the Marine Protected Areas Agency, which is another public institution that falls under the Ministry of Health, Margot Pinel issues a call for increased vigilance.
You can't fish just anywhere and everywhere. It's quite easy to go and collect mussels, shellfish, bring them back in your bucket, cook them like you see on TV, and then think there's absolutely no risk involved. Finally, you really need to be cautious because you can potentially get sick. These illnesses are not usually very serious, but there can still be conditions like gastroenteritis, severe headaches, and even developing a fever. Things that are connected to the consumption of shellfish, which can sometimes be quite harmful.
If it's easy to collect shells, according to Margot, it's much harder to know if they are good or bad.
We are going to carry out the test live, thoroughly reviewing the entire sanitary quality at a specific shoreline fishing site located in the Manche department. So, we have the first two sites coming up, and the site of the ARS Baisse Normandie, the Regional Health Agency. The first one informs us about health follow-ups. In Brittany, so we are in Manche, which is neither the right department nor the right region, and the second site is quite good. We land on the site of the Regional Health Agency of Lower Normandy. Recreational fishing, the results of the 2009 season, even though we are in 2016. So online it's indeed not obvious. There are several sites. It's not very clear. There is no national site. We can't click, I'm going to fish in such and such a place. Check if my spot is open.
And in the field, is the information more accessible? To find out, we are going to the town of Breal, not far from Granville. We meet Florian. He works with Margot on behalf of the Marine Protected Areas Agency. Breal is one of the most frequented beaches by shore fishers in France, and yet little to no information on the health of the shellfish.
It's a small document that presents the health status of the site. It comprehensively includes monitoring in terms of bacteriology and metals, and this one is a bit out of date. It's already 2 years old, so the municipality should definitely consider renewing it as soon as possible. Well, sometimes things get forgotten, it happens. That's how it is. We try to keep an eye on it to remind the elected officials that they need to make the effort to update in order to best advise the fishermen. Because especially here we're discussing health aspects. So it's also the health of the people that's at stake here. Hello, ma'am. We're giving out free tools along with all the regulations on shore fishing. Especially for mussels, since I see that's what you're mostly fishing for today. All these species, like mussels and clams, are called filter feeders, and they nourish themselves by drawing in water. The problem is that with the heavy rains of the past couple of days, lots of urban pollution is ending up flowing into the water. So, we tend to advise against shore fishing after heavy rainfall, because there might potentially be some pollution in the species. Here you go. One last little piece of advice, avoid putting your animals in the water, because as I mentioned, they are filter feeders. So they will feed by sucking in water, but the problem is that eventually they will suck up all the oxygen and risk dying of suffocation.
Mussels filter approximately 30 liters of water each day and accumulate toxins in their tissue and the surrounding pollutants. They are likely to accumulate in shellfish, potentially poisoning consumers.
So there is a much greater chance of getting poisoned by shellfish that are gathered like that on the beach compared to shellfish that are bought from professional producers who are extremely well monitored and guarantee excellent sanitary conditions for consumers.
François Moncel is an emergency doctor at SAMU. For him, the toxins in mussels are so potent, they can sometimes be deadly.
The most well-known of these toxins are diarrheic phycotoxins, which can cause this dysentery syndrome, that is to say, a foodborne intoxication with diarrhea and dehydration. You have a second. That's serious though. Yes, it can be serious. We are often hospitalized for severe diarrhea and significant dehydration. You need a hospital then. There's another toxin, a phycotoxin, amnestic toxin that specifically impacts the higher neurological centers, particularly the brain, leading to very severe symptoms that can, from convulsions to coma, and naturally, once again, justify the need for hospitalization. And then you have a third type of phycotoxin which primarily affects the peripheral neurological centers, causing issues with sensitivity, sensory paralysis, and even sensory motor paralysis, which can progress to complete paralysis of respiratory functions and ultimately lead to the death of the patient. Here's the key point. What's essential is that for these toxins, the dose makes the poison. The larger the quantity of poison you ingest, the more severe and significantly pronounced the symptoms are likely to become.
So, as François Moncel says, to avoid poisoning yourself, it's better to trust the professionals and their products. Rungis is the world's largest fresh produce market. At the Tide Pavilion, the first to open, they sell ultra-fresh products. Here, a product's life lasts no more than 2 or 3 days. We meet Stéphane again, our mussel producer from the Mont Saint-Michel Bay. He arrived with a chef from Canquel to proudly present the season's first bouchot mussels.
It's the beginning of the season, and well, these are the first sales. So we're doing this under Rungis to also get a bit of customer feedback to see how things are going to go. So, listen. This is great, this is great. Wanna try the Morisot mussel, the bouchot mussel? Oh well, it's definitely been quite a very long time.
Carrots,
Cauliflowers, avocados, cider jelly. You are welcome to taste everything. Want a bit of white wine to help it go down? Careful, he's a connoisseur. If his wife overcooks it, he won't like it. We mainly have fishmongers, and they naturally come from the Paris region, so this also allows us to create connections with them. And then we're also lucky to host fishmongers who come from the south of France. We have Sophie Fernandez, who is the MOF of 2015, Meilleur Ouvrier de France 2015, and who traveled from Gaillac to Rungis, and also with other fishmongers who come from Albi, finally, well, from all over France. They will be very happy to welcome them.
the Mont Saint-Michel Bay mussel is not an ordinary mussel. It is the only seafood product to benefit from an AOC, an appellation of controlled origin since 2006, and a PDO, a protected designation of origin, since 2011. It's a mussel that has to be at least 4 centimeters, and which grows on the 200,000 poles of the Breton part of Mont Saint-Michel. Only 70 producers, passed down from father to son in 7 coastal villages, have the right to produce and sell Mont Saint-Michel PDO mussels. 10 to 12,000 metric tons each year, making up 1/5 of all French production. Stefan is one of them. Along with his dedicated crew, they've donned their protective suits to carefully seed the piles with young, vibrant mussels.
The bouchot, its principle is that the mussel is on a stake, like this. And actually, with the phenomenon of tides, it is both in the water and in the air. And so it gives it a particular resistance and a particular taste as well. That's what sets it apart from the rope mussel, which actually stays in the water all the time. So certainly it will be larger in shell, and it might also be fuller since it has been feeding for a longer duration of time. But on the other hand, indeed, it won't have that tender, creamy texture and flavor. And this aspect, this particular flavor of the bouchot mussel. There, it slipped away from us. We wanted to create our own brand, dedicated to my grandfather. My grandfather's name was Morisot, and it's a bit of a nod. So there we wanted something really personal. And we also wanted to venture a bit off the beaten path. And actually, the Morisot was a request from our clients. Traditional fishmongers were actually looking for a product of true and exceptional excellence, not just the standard quality. The PDO was excellent, but they desired even greater excellence. That's the reason why we had the idea to selectively choose our different dealerships. For example, the best deals, we'll give them to those fishmongers. Thus Morisot began.
The Morisot is truly the Rolls-Royce of bouchot mussels. It is larger in size and much fleshier when compared to the classic PDO mussel. It sells for twice the price, about €8 per kilo. It is also the only one that can compete with the mussels from Holland, the other land of black gold. At 5 in the morning, we are aboard the Seacoast, a Dutch boat that fishes for mussels on the eastern Escaut, which everyone calls a tidal river around here. Twice a day, 1,000 million cubic meters of salt water mix with the fresh water from the river. A paradise for these shells. In summer, mussel larvae are born by the millions in northern Holland. "18 months later, once they have reached maturity, they are harvested by dredging from the river. On a growth plot, we typically put about 20 to 30 centimeters of mussel.
They are 20 to 30 cm thick.
So the mussel farmer will spread them out, trying to level the plot as best as he possibly can. On the storage plots, the quantities are much larger. We can get over 50 centimeters of mold, 5,000 square meters per site.
But they are side by side.
There are 50 centimeters of mold on 5,000 square meters. That's it.
But multiplied by an impressive number of plots, there are quite a lot of plots.
Olivier Camelot is a trader. He purchases and sells hundreds of tons of this specific shellfish on behalf of the Delta Mussel Company. He's out today on one of those boats that fish for mussels.
On the boat, by the end of the day, there won't be much, maybe around 20 tons or so, definitely no more than that. But there are boats that can come back to the dock with around 100 tons.
Twice a day, the fishing boats return to the small port of Jurske and actively contribute to its one-of-a-kind operation.
The individual responsible for swearing in the auction carefully noted the height of the compartment to determine the overall volume.
He knows the length and width, only the height was missing.
All right, now we're going to take the sample. So the person who has been officially sworn in for the auction goes and selects a random spot on the boat to take it from. It can be just above or very deep down. We properly label the sample, which is also placed into a bucket and then securely sealed shut.
Before the auction begins, each lot is thoroughly analyzed. The size of the shell, presence of debris or parasites on the mussel, amount of meat, everything is meticulously scrutinized. The room next door, on the other hand, looks like an examination room. Behind their desks, about 10 men silently scrutinize an electronic board. Origins, producers, lengths, widths, buyers discover the characteristics of the batch of mussels up for auction. Each buyer indicates the price they want to pay. The bell rings and the lot goes to the highest bidder. Olivier's company just snagged the muse. That's why I say it's a job of regret, because when you get the lot, you don't know by how much you were too generous. Did we give €1 more than the next? Or 10 or 100? We don't know. When we didn't get any water, we always know exactly how stingy we were. Olivier and his colleagues' work can begin. The size of the facilities is impressive. Every day, a boat supplies the factory with mussels. They are poured into containers and sprayed with seawater for 8 hours to purge them. Calibrated and trimmed of their beards, they are plunged into icy seawater to cool them down and extend their shelf life. Weighed and carefully packaged, they are then stored in a cold room, where they await their departure on the very same day. But before they leave Holland, random batches taken from the production line are thoroughly checked and analyzed by the company. Every day, on different batches, different sizes, different destinations. That's the daily routine we follow. Here we have tons of analyses that are carried out every single day, every single day, every single day. Per day, let's say, a minimum of 3 to 4, and it can be 6, 7, 8 a day. There's nothing mandatory, but it's part of the monitoring, the follow-up of the product we offer, and it's important. Delta Mussel additionally commissions weekly chemical and biological analyses of the mussels and their surrounding environment from a private laboratory. We are located in quite an industrialized part of Europe, and the area is consistently classified as quality A. Everything is extremely controlled since we are on an inland sea, so all discharges in the vicinity are extremely well monitored.
Imagine picking up a mussel right there in the park and eating it now as you leave the park.
If you want, we can do it right now, no problem. It's no issue. Zones of quality B? I don't remember ever seeing any here in Holland. To check this, we head to the SGS laboratory in Antwerp, where they conduct their analyses. Monitoring of chemical contaminants, research on phycotoxins, and assessment of microbiological quality. The procedure is exactly the same as in France.
After 24 hours of incubation have passed, we examine the Escherichia coli colonies that appear as small, distinct blue spots. Here is an example of a positive test. You can clearly see the blue colonies. This positive test result demonstrates the high quality of the mussel and the water with very little Escherichia coli present.
No surprise, the rate is well below 230 Escherichia coli per 100 grams of flesh. It is indeed grade A water, where the Dutch mussel flourishes. And perhaps that is the reason why it is so highly anticipated at the tables of the Lille flea market. They arrived this morning by truck directly from the Dutch coasts in 15-kilo bags at this restaurateur's. A figure from Lille? You lay them down, don't slam them, or they'll break. Big calibers, imperials, white mussels, appreciated by the people of the north. They will be in jute bags. The mussel gets the impression that it's always in the sea because it lives with its very own water.
Less tide.
Ass up.
You start to put it on. Can you see where he's holding me?
Check.
If you can get one like this and one like that, you see? There? Yeah.
Look, see that?
You get a perk.
See there, the freshness.
You see that? You see the juice dripping there?
Yes, see, it's dripping. Fees?
Are they unbeatable? No, no, not at all. For now, they are not cheap for us.
I could earn more money. If we talk money, I'd earn more by doing lower quality work. But we can't let people down. They expect us, we follow the plan.
You sell mussels, and if you don't sell top,
You're definitely gonna get wrecked.
good. Tomorrow morning, don't let it get to you. Yeah, be careful. Go.
The flea market in Lille is considered the largest of its kind in Europe. 33 hours non-stop to sell and buy everything imaginable. And to swallow 500 tons of mussels and 30 tons of fries? But by the way, why do we eat mussels on the first weekend of September in Lille? Because the chickens couldn't survive. Inexpensive and easy to enjoy, poultry was probably originally the favorite dish of the bargain hunters. But the chicken missed out on several editions due to an epidemic, and the mollusk allegedly took its place during those times. We go!
Okay, let's get going. Hello, everyone. How many of you? 3 at 3.
How are you doing, Benham? This way.
We'll set you up, please. Enjoy your meal. Thank you. The queue?
She reaches mid-street. We still open, and earlier on purpose.
So there's less waiting time as it can stretch. To the bank over there. Here you go. It's good. When like this, we're proud.
We have loyal clients.
Who are happy to come? 4 balls. And you see they're grinding.
The best-selling recipe is the mussels mariniere.
A little whiner, a little whiner. Oh, come on, stop it. We're sending back moldy little whiners, guys. We need 9 of those, seriously. Oh, just shut up already.
She says it, he places it, you get the ticket, check tray.
Okay?
And then, of course, there are the fries. We eat them with our hands, obviously. And the fries.
You see?
You don't need to take cutlery. So it's the fry stand that you'll find at the stadium.
It's the delicious fries you're going to find when you're exiting from the fair.
Left fair close.
You know, eating with your hands really levels the playing field. There are no more social categories.
No rich.
There are no more poor people, no more bourgeois or frollo. It's always the same.
Regular attendees of the clearance sale unknowingly ate fragments of plastic contained in the mussels. Is this plastic?
And what we eat there? Really? No, I didn't know. I didn't know at all. No, I didn't know. No, really, I didn't know that there was plastic in it. I honestly had absolutely no idea whatsoever that was the case. No, I didn't know, but it affects health.
That's the problem. And in what quantity?
It inspires me that everything is polluted, so enough is enough now. Unfortunately, not more surprised than that.
If we can't eat what we want,
If there's plastic everywhere, that's what keeps it level.
because the plastic waste polluting the seas has found its way onto the menu of sea creatures. These are Belgian researchers from the prestigious University of Ghent who arrived at this result. Professor Colin Johnson analyzed the stomach of mussels caught in the North Sea. His results are undeniable.
In every single mussel sample we analyzed, we consistently found microplastic particles. Generally, it was either polypropylene or polyethylene plastics. On average, across all the sampling stations and for each of the mussels collected, we found 0.37 microplastic particles per gram of mussel. This means that for a mussel weighing 3 or 4 grams, which is the normal weight of an edible mussel, you have about 1 to 2 microplastic particles.
If we consider on average that the flesh of a mussel represents 30% of its total weight, that makes 150 million fragments of plastic ingested at the Lille clearance sale over a weekend. So at night,
When going to the restaurant and eating just one portion, you will most likely end up ingesting somewhere between 100 and 200 tiny microplastic particles. An infinitesimal part that is between 0.008 and 0.5% of these microparticles could, and I emphasize this term, penetrate into your intestine and potentially remain in your body. The real question to consider is whether this might be dangerous for human beings and if it can lead to any negative effects. Can this cause inflammations? Do these particles accumulate in certain organs? I do not know, and nobody knows at the moment. But we absolutely need to investigate this phenomenon.
A priori, according to the scientific community, the answer remains no. Plastics wouldn't have sufficient time to impact our health, nor that of shellfish. For now, we can continue to eat mussels, especially since they also contain many nutrients that are good for health. With or without plastic, the bivalve shells inevitably end up getting stacked on the sidewalk. And please, selfie lovers. But today, for hygiene reasons, the mussel piles, symbols of the market, will vanish from Lille's sidewalks. The French are eating more and more mussels, regardless of the season, over 180,000 tons per year. So, to meet the rising demand, Léon de Bruxelles has taken a significant new step by now offering delicious takeaway meals.
Me, I'm sending you a mussel to take away with Roquefort. Yes. All right, here we go. I'll keep it warm for 2 hours. Now for 2 hours. It's huge that it is designed so that the customer, when he gets home, he can still eat hot mussels, even if he lives 20 or 25 kilometers away.
Red, green, yellow, every single one of the recipes is available for takeout.
So for the priest, it's the color yellow, and for the sailors, it's the color orange, and for sailors, it's Leon colored. This allows us to know. So as soon as we claim, we say we know it's green. If it's cured, we know it's yellow. It allows us to go faster, yes, but we know everything. There. Well, there. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your meal.
Back in the Petouis Charente. It's springtime. The sale of rope-grown mussels is just beginning. After 12 months attached to a rope, they are now fully and perfectly ready to be enjoyed.
We can see that the mussel has developed more flesh. You can very clearly see the thickness between my knife blade and my thumb. The thickness of the flesh. So here we have a product with about 30 to 32% flesh content with a magnificent taste. Traditionally, the first mussels we eat, we open them like this with a little piece of bread under the plate, a vinaigrette. We dip them in the vinegar and we eat them. Naturally with a bit of vinegar.
Yannick Mariano is smiling again on his boat. These mussels have regained the taste and color that made them famous. But for how long? Because the quality of coastal waters is deteriorating more and more. European justice has moreover condemned France several times in recent years for its inability to improve its water quality. The mortalities in Charente, it shows just how fragile the mussel, like all shellfish, can be. She is now more than ever considered a sentinel animal of the ecosystem within which she evolves.